As we move towards cruising to the end of this panel, one thing that we're going to ask each of our panelists to do is to offer a succinct and brief policy takeaway. This is something that Harvard plans to present to policymakers around the United States, around the world, whoever is interested. And I think we'll just go through in the order that we introduce everybody in. So we'll start with you, Governor.
I'll say the one thing I've learned today is my wife is a very slow driver, and so I wonder what she's doing in this. But I do think this discussion, it seems to me, ends up centered on two things. One is, how do we make sure medically marijuana is available for people who need it? And I really appreciate the doctors urging us to separate that discussion off from the broad recreational use. And the second is, what really is the effect on young people? And to me, those are the issues that I think really need to be looked at and studied. And frankly, as I said at the beginning, I think we are forming broad national consensus around this, which is medical marijuana. I think the opposition to that has faded. The only opposition to it is, can you set the system up correctly? And on the second, I think we're moving towards obviously making it less of a serious offense, and where along the scale from total legalization to a very serious criminal offense, where in that scale are we best
where
putting
is the new normal?
Where is the new normal? Good point.
Great.
Yeah.
Eden.
Yeah, so legalization brings the power of the marketplace that will certainly increase availability and use in young people. And it's begun before we know the full risks of exposure in adolescents whose brains are developing. So this is a large-scale experiment on the next generation, and it may be a generation before we're able to understand what we've done.
Jeffrey.
So I would say that prohibition was the experiment, prohibition of marijuana and other drugs. Okay, we had a free society on that dimension before we outlawed them. And that experiment of trying to outlaw bad outcomes, get rid of bad outcomes by outlawing a substance, has failed. Okay, and the right thing to do is to take marijuana out of the Controlled Substances Act, indeed to repeal the Controlled Substances Act more generally, but leave that aside for today. Barring that, moving marijuana from Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act, which says it has no medicinal use, it has extreme potential for horrible effects, clearly exaggeration, into Schedule 2, where doctors could legally prescribe it under federal law, would be an enormous step in the right direction.
Great. Out to Colorado, and you, Skylar.
Sure. So I guess I have 2 points. My first would be that, data collection, we keep coming back to it in this conversation, that's key. We just commissioned and issued what's called a Marijuana Data Gap and Analysis Report, which shows what we know, what we know, what we don't know, and what we don't know, we don't know. And figuring out those holes is key to figuring out what legalization means. And on a related note, I would say that, Colorado can't do this alone, but we have to. The federal government would normally be involved with dozens of aspects of regulating something like this, and that's from pesticides to banking to out-of-state diversion. Because our laws conflict with federal laws, though, we have to figure these problems out on our own, and I think we're doing a good job, but we don't have the resources that the federal government does. So the federal government is allowing this to take place in Colorado and Washington, and we're thankful for that, but I think that considerations need to be made continually on please let us have banking. Please let us, conduct research on this, and please let, our universities do that. So, we're doing a good job, but boy, the federal government's a lot bigger, got a lot more money, and we could use their help.
No state is an island, other than Hawaii, right. I suppose. All right, and out to California, and you, Igor.
Yeah, so I'd like to close with a couple of points. One is to reinforce what Governor Doyle said. Let's, separate the medical discussion from the broader issue of social policy and legalization. Secondly, let's get past the idea that there is no evidence whatever that these compounds have any medical value, and that picks up on what Jeffrey was saying about scheduling. Scheduling means, at the moment, marijuana resides with heroin and other terribly dangerous drugs, with the additional statement that it has no medical value. That's just not true, and so the rescheduling is important. I would reinforce that. It will permit research. Third, echoing what was said before, the larger scale trials that really need to be done in order to inform policy should be informed by data, I would argue, rather than by faith. So the federal government needs to be involved in supporting these trials through NIH and other processes. And fourth, I would say that to the extent that marijuana or cannabinoids have medical benefit, they should be dispensed and treated like other medicines. We would not go to a flea market or a farmer's market to buy penicillin. We wouldn't know what was in there. And similarly, since these are medicines, they should be dispensed by pharmacies or some other means that are well regulated where the patients know really what they're getting and doctors know what they're prescribing. So my final point would be, let's have less heat and more light on this topic, or let's blow less smoke and get into the clean.
I'm not even going to try to top that as a closing line. I'm just going to leave that with you.